Less than 48 hours after the debut of a documentary about the Minneapolis Police Department, a male police officer knelt on the neck of an unarmed black man as 3 other male police officers either knelt on his back and legs or stood by watching. Nearly 9 minutes later, George Floyd was dead. Most media reports mention the races of the 4 police officers, 2 white, 2 Asian. Few, if any, mention their gender. Oh no, I think I know where this is going. Could George Floyd's death have been prevented had there been women police officers on the scene? Of course it would have. He would have up and ran away while 3 dainty women cops were dragged along the asphalt as they hung on to his 6'6", 242-pound frame. It's likely, said Kathleen Spiller, executive director of the Feminist Majority Foundation and executive editor of Ms. Am I surprised that the director of a feminist foundation and the executive director of this very magazine said yes? Of course not. Talk about a conflict of interest. You would think a competent news organization would at least get a scientific, unbiased opinion to this question, but we aren't dealing with competency here. That's one of the main themes of the documentary Women in Blue, which had its first screening on May 23rd as a part of the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Film Festival. It was shifted to a virtual event as the city continued to shelter in place in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The documentary follows 5 female police officers, including former Minneapolis Police Chief Janae Harteau, the city's first female police chief. Sounds like a blast, watching an 82-minute movie on women playing dress-up while attempting to be men. The film highlights the attributes women bring to police departments and asks, what could policing look like if there were more women? And what skills do we want our officers to have? Said the director, Deirdre Fischel, an independent director and associate professor at City College of New York. Great question. Let's look at the footage. Multiple studies spanning 50 years show that female officers lead with de-escalation and communication, while male officers are more likely to lead with force and aggression. A landmark report by an independent commission convened after the 1991 beating by LAPD of Rodney King found many LAPD officers, both male and female, believe female officers are less personally challenged by defiant suspects and feel less need to deal with defiance with immediate force or confrontational language. I don't know if the study is legit. I didn't read it. But when a gangbanger is resisting arrest, society doesn't need a counselor or mediator as cops, but men who are willing to put their lives on the line. A 2002 study of 7 major U.S. police departments by the National Center for Women in Policing found that the average male officer is over 8.5 times more likely than his female counterpart to have an allegation of excessive force sustained against him, and 2 or 3 times more likely than the average female officer to have a citizen name him in a complaint of excessive force. In the year 2001, a year before that study, there was only 11% of female officers in the United States. I would think the study is skewed, since there is a larger pool of men compared to women, to choose from. And since men are more prone to be aggressive, then yeah, that makes sense. Which leads me to this point. I would think male police officers are used in more potential violent situations, such as drug raids, undercover work, and jobs of the sort, putting men in more situations in which force is necessary. That just makes sense. I looked into a few of these studies which the article cites, and they are just a bunch of social justice-based nonsense. For example, one of these studies cited was written by this woman, Cara Rabe Hemp, a feminist criminologist who also wrote this gem of an article, Policewomen or Policewomen. Nice. Doing Gender and Police Work. The abstract for the article reads, this work originates from a set of accounts given by female police officers to determine how they construct their identity and their image of themselves in relation to their gender, as they talk about the roles as police and the broader roles of men and women in society. Despite policewomen's fight for equality in policing, women not only differentiated themselves from their male counterparts, but also described doing gender and doing police work collaboratively. Women actively resisted and adopted stereotypical norms of femininity in policing, broadening their opportunities for work in male-dominated occupation while reinforcing their traditional conception of gender difference. I don't even know what that means. You know, the thing about these social justice warriors and their ideological views, all you have to do is just dig a little bit, just right under the surface, and their true motives and pernicious agendas are revealed. Subsequent studies found that female police officers use less extreme forms of violence and less controlling behaviors, are less involved in corruption and sexual misconduct than their male counterparts, and conclude hiring more women as police officers may help in reducing excessive force. Police departments have failed to make changes in who they are hiring to adjust to what communities want from officers today, says Spiller. She points out that the hiring of police recruits is anchored to standards drawn up in the 60s and 70s by two national commissions on law enforcement and administration, when officers were recruited for physical strength rather than for critical thinking and communication skills needed for community-based policing. The problem is police departments continue to hire the wrong kind of person. We are not saying that only women are qualified to be police officers, Spiller continues. We are saying there should be equal numbers of police women who reflect the diversity of communities they serve. It would revolutionize police departments. Okay, let's play that game. Just as we need equality in the police force, let's have equality in sanitation. Let's have equality in carpentry. How about all industrial work? How about offshore oil rigging? In fact, over 97% of victims of police shootings are men. So let's equalize that too. Policing really comes from your heart, said White, who became a police officer so she could police the way she wished officers had policed when she was a child after some not that great interactions with the Minneapolis Police Department. I don't know what not that great. What does that mean? That's such a subjective, cryptic phrase. That screams female. Leave it to a woman to say that policing comes from the heart. Yeah, it's really a sentimental and emotional experience when a routine traffic stop turns into a fight for survival for the cop. Policing is just a necessity in a modern America, period. There's no emotion to it. Spiller says anecdotal stories such as White's support the few studies that have been done about why people become police officers. Women police more often say that they want to help their communities. Men say policing is about using force to gain compliance with the law. I have literally never heard a man say that before. I've literally never heard a policeman say that before, or a police chief say that before. I have heard a police chief say, I want to help my community. I have heard that. I don't know where they're getting this. And right there, Spiller defined biological gender predilections in terms of motivation to be a police officer. Women want a peaceful community with no conflict, and men want to protect their society. I didn't think gender predilections existed. Despite the added measures, the number of people killed by police each year has remained unchanged, hovering at 1,000. The other thing that has remained unchanged is the number of women in police forces. What feminists always overlook is that women don't choose to do these jobs. That is the key here. There aren't women lining up at the doors of police stations clamoring to become a police officer. Between 2001 and 2020, the percentage of women in the police force has literally remained stagnant at 11%. I think it ticked up slightly to 12 a couple years ago. But that just proves that women overwhelmingly choose to do other jobs. Like, things pertaining to nurturing people like nursing, dentistry, teaching, elderly care, etc. Gender imbalance can make for a challenging work environment with a lot of rules for female police officers, say former Minneapolis Police Inspector Catherine C.J. Johnson. Act enough like the guys so they can believe that you can help if things go to hell, but not so much like the guys that they feel threatened. I swear, man, these feminists are so self-righteous and smug. Men go to work to get the job done. No feelings involved, just determination and resolve. And most of the time, we don't enjoy it. We understand we have the obligation to our family or to ourselves, and to act accordingly to fulfill those obligations. We aren't concerned about the feelings of others at our workplace. The job comes first. Since the 70s, when women fled the workforce, there has been an incalculable amount of waste, both in time and efficiency, caused by women in the workplace. Women who are more concerned about other things than work, who are less than capable, both in terms of physical and mental acuity, than men. Can you imagine how efficient our economy could be right now if there were no women, or very little women in the workforce? There are also a lot of labels. You're either seen as a mother, a bitch, or a whore, says former Minneapolis Police Commander Melissa Chido, who says she earned the bitch title because she reported and held accountable officers who used excessive force. Women, if you're listening, do you ever think that you earn those labels? If you don't want to be called a bitch or a slut, then don't be one. Women are notorious for vying for attention from the top men at their jobs, usually disrupting the work environment. I think that's why they earn those titles. Also, I want to address the several criticisms sprinkled throughout the article on how men are prone to assaulting others. That's rich, coming from a demographic that is just as culpable of domestic violence as men are. However, in my opinion, I think women are more prone to commit domestic violence than men, since men are less willing to call the police when a woman becomes violent. Moreover, since women are more likely to lie to police officers about being abused, this also inflates the numbers even more. Despite that, in homes in which both parties are abusive, the abuse is 50% women, 50% men. Now, in homes in which only one partner is abusive, it's 70% of the time it's women. Now, you tell me which gender is more prone to violence. Also, women are far more likely to hit children. This study was taken in the United Kingdom. Note the households with single mothers. They were responsible for 1.4 million cases in 5 years of abuse. Now, that is more than single and married fathers combined by a lot. And I'm sure the stats in the United States is just as comparable, if not higher. This epidemic of violence by women is never discussed. Talk about privilege.